You're by yourself and you need to come up with some new ideas. In this video, I'm going to take you through 6 different ways that you can brainstorm by yourself without the input of others to come up with some new solutions or think of problems in new ways to help you come up with those solutions. My name's Chris, and on this channel, I like to share the sorts of tools and processes that I've learned over the years as an engineer and a consultant to help people cut through complex problems that they might face at work, and then to define and communicate those solutions to others to really sell that idea in people's minds. So in this video, I'm going to take you through 6 ways to brainstorm by yourself. Brainstorming alone, brainstorming solo. So those 6 ways are the checklist method, the forced connection, the forced limitations, the what if, the attribute listing method, and parameter analysis. So hopefully these will give you some new ways to think about your problem or to think about your solution if you've got one already, and to methodically come up with those new ideas that will help you in your brainstorming process. So I'm going to run through how to do each of these, and we're going to start with the checklist method. So in the checklist method, the key is to come up with a series of questions to ask about your problem or your solution, and then to run through that checklist of questions or notes or statements to then force yourself to think about your problem in a different way. If you're not sure where to get started with those questions or items to put on your checklist, I've got 6 of them here on the screen. So when you have your problem or solution, to run through the checklist method, think about how you can modify different parts of your solution, how you can make it bigger or smaller, so magnify or minimize your solution. Could it be, take for modification where you take one small part of it out and then you modify it and put it back together. So magnification or minimization is about making it bigger or making it smaller. And this is intentionally vague. It's to give you a prompt to think about how to do it. So in the example video I did where I walked through step by step how to do the checklist method, I used the example of trains. So for modifying a train, maybe that's putting new seats in or removing seats to carry more people. Magnifying the solution of a train could be making the train longer to transport more people. Minimizing it could be making it smaller so that more trains can come more often. And the next 3 are to substitute, to rearrange, or to compare. So to substitute part of your solution or to substitute the whole solution itself. For example, with trains, to substitute, maybe we don't have a train network, maybe we have a bus network instead. Or you can substitute part of it, such as train doors could be absent, for example. Back in the day when you used to be able to just jump on a train without the door in the way. You can also rearrange different parts of the solution or combine new parts of the solution in. So that's 6 approaches within the checklist method that can give you an idea on how to get started with your problem or solution. I did a whole video about the checklist method, so I've left a link in the description below if you're interested in that one. But the checklist method is basically think about your problem or solution, come up with have a checklist of questions or statements to ask yourself about it, and then run through that checklist and gather the ideas at the end to see what you've come up with. So the second item on our list is the forced connection brainstorming. So this is where you can take your item, idea, situation, product, and list out some of the attributes about it. So you start with a row across, put this into a table, start with a list of attributes across the top, and then go through each of those attributes and put below it something that, some alternative that sounds like or that behaves like that attribute at the top of the list. So come up with some alternatives for this one, come up with some alternatives for this one, and so on and so forth. Then pick one at random from each column and ask yourself how they join together. So pick, I think I used coffee for this example. So list out some attributes of coffee. Well, the taste is one attribute. So coffee can be bitter, perhaps it could be sweet, perhaps it could be fruity or nutty. And then a second set of attributes could be about the temperature. It could be hot, room temperature, or cold. So then pick out one from each column. What about nutty, cold coffee? Is that something that's good? How does that join together? How does that work together? So again, I did a video on that if you're interested in the step-by-step, but to pick one from each column, ask yourself how they join, and then evaluate, is that potentially a new idea? So this is a good one to do by yourself because I find it maybe a good one to follow on from that checklist method. Because once you've got thinking about the different angles of your problem or solution, you can now start thinking about the attributes that make up those angles. So forced connection gives you an opportunity to make new connections about your solution or your product based on the alternative attributes that might come up. So I've done another video on that, so I'll leave the link in the description below. The next one we've got is the forced limitation brainstorming. So this is where you force so it's a bit different. Despite the name, it's not related to forced connection. So you take a description of your system you take a description of your solution or problem in terms of an input, a process, and an output, and then see if you can put limitations on each of those. So it's a round peg in a square hole, square peg in a round hole. Whichever way it is, leave a comment below whichever way you think that should be. But it's to take a limitation, to force a limitation onto your solution and then see how it behaves. Because given, the counterexample is given unlimited time and resources in the world, how would you come up with, you'd never come up with a solution. It would go through years of procurement and approvals, and because of the unlimited nature of it. So by forcing yourself to have some limitations, you can evaluate how a new solution might come out. For example, I can't think of one. Back to the train example, we're limited in the amount of electricity we can use. For example, why not use a travelator? Why not use an automated walkway for everyone just to move along? In some cases, you can get more people per hour that way. However, it's there are limitations. We don't have that much electricity to use, or we don't have that much maintenance money available. It would be impractical. So what sort of limitations do we put on our system to come up with new solutions, to innovate a little bit? And so limitations can be things like the amount of time, the amount of money, the amount of space available, the amount of interfaces you want to have. So to give you an idea, it is something you can do by yourself to come up with new limitations on your system, on your solution, so that you can think about how to solve within those limitations. This one, I feel you kind of need a solution in mind already, and then this is about improving that solution. So rather than coming up with the problem first. So the next one is about asking what if. So step by step, what if brainstorming is really easy, because it's just ask what if and then record your answers. So I've done some of this already in the other brainstorming methods, but so you can see that it's quite easy to do by yourself, just to sit there and ask what if. So some suggestions on, I mean, you have to ask what if something. So what if it was such and such, or what if this other thing happened? Just like we've done with the other brainstorming. So I've got some suggestions there on the screen. What if our solution was bigger? What if our solution was smaller? So that's similar to the checklist method. What if our solution was faster? What if it was slower? What if our problem was invisible? What if we couldn't see our problem all of a sudden? Would it still work? What if our problem was very visible? What if it was a different color? So asking all of these what if questions, what if our solution was broken? What if it was whole? Asking all these sorts of what if questions can really trigger the mind into some brainstorming. And that's something that I like about the what if method, that the possibilities are endless. Unfortunately, as I just mentioned in the forced limitations approach, that having limitless possibilities does make this a bit of a challenge, which is why I put it so far down the list, even though asking what if I feel is at the core of brainstorming. I put it so far down on the list because it's not a really well-defined process. It can be a bit hard to walk through yourself if you don't have that creative mind to sit there and think and doodle and daydream about what if brainstorming can be a bit more awkward. Okay, and the next item is attribute listing. So this is where we take our solution or our problem, list attributes or functionality of it. I suggest sticking to 2-word descriptions. Then we place some valuation on those attributes and then modify them. The attributes, this is similar to a process I've used at work called value engineering, where you think about what your system does, or what your solution or function or product does, what it achieves, and then, or maybe add some description about it as well, and then place value on those descriptions, and then modify those. And we go through a full value analysis process to think about how we modify those descriptions to see what else we can come up with. So being a brainstorming technique, this is a little less defined, so it's not so strict. In this case, I've chosen a watch as an example. So a watch, the attributes of a watch could be to tell time and to look nice. These are the typical attributes of a watch. I mean, what else does a watch do? It can tell the time, it can look nice. Let's start with the basics there. So basic attributes, and we place some value on them. So telling time is quite a cheap function to achieve these days. Watch mechanisms, I think you can buy them wholesale for a few US. And looking nice is really the value of a watch, a value attribute that you can change these days. So do you want your cheap $5 off-the-shelf watch? Does that look nice to you? Or do you want some really expensive designer watch? And does that look nice? So what sort of valuation you can put on looking nice can sort of change how you think about your solution here in this attribute listing. So this also gives us the opportunity to modify the attributes as well. So we can modify this attribute by, what if we said count time as well? So suddenly you've gone from a watch to a chronometer, that you can count time with your watch. That's a new function, that's a new attribute. Does that have a value associated as well? And what is that value? So there's something interesting there to think about. What sort of values is applicable to the modified attributes, and how does that change? So this sort of process, it's starting to really get into the area of defining your solution rather than coming up with new ideas. However, depending on how complex your solution is, and I've seen this applied from everything from brand new train lines to business ideas. They're kind of as a consulting engineer, they're kind of the solutions that I look at anyway. But it could apply to a whole city's trade network, or it could apply to the business that you're looking to start. So try out attribute listing as perhaps one of the later options when you've already thought about what sort of solution you're looking at for implementing your problem, and you want to make that solution a bit better. So that's where I find attribute listing comes in best. The final one I wanted to look at in this video for brainstorming solo is parameter analysis. So this one, I haven't really had much experience with it myself, which is why you can see that the drawing for this one is a bit simple. But so the key here is to, again, think of your solution as an input, process, and output system, and then what sort of variables go into that solution. So variables like how much money you're putting in, how much raw material you're putting in. If you were manufacturing, say, laptops, how much metal are you putting in, and how much plastic are you putting in? So those sorts of variables, and how much time. And then to rank those variables in terms of their importance, and then see what you can come up with in terms of playing around with how those variables are affected. Would you want to substitute more plastic for metal because plastic is the more important variable? Are you willing to accept a longer time in your manufacturing process because money is important, and longer time means cheaper cost? So those are the sorts of things to think about in parameter analysis. But it's something that can be a bit hard, which is kind of why I've left it at the end to think about. Again, like the attribute listing, you sort of need to know a little bit about your solution first before you can start thinking about the parameters. Of course, you can apply it to a brand new problem that doesn't have a solution. If you think about the sort of parameters that are going into your problem, rank those in importance, and then see how you can address those parameters. And that could give you another alternative to coming up with new ideas when you're working solo. So that's a brief overview of the 6 ideas that I put together on solo brainstorming. So take a look at the checklist method, see if you can come up with some forced connections. Does your solution improve when you force limitations on it? Have you asked yourself, what if things were different about your solution or your problem? List out the attributes and see which attributes you can improve or modify. Come up with new attributes. And then take a look at the parameters of your solution. Where can it be improved? What are the trade-offs between the different parameters? My name's Chris, and I like to share the sorts of tools like this that I've used to define and come up with new solutions, to really communicate those solutions to other people as well. That's what this channel is about, defining and communicating solutions to complex problems to other people. So if you're interested in more videos like this, please hit subscribe or leave a comment below about what you think of the different brainstorming methods and what ideas you've come up with. I'll be happy to hear. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video.